Shalom. One of the fascinating things about the process of Yetziat Mitzrayim is the focus that the parashot give about the Egyptians. In our mindset, we think it's all about us, Am Yisrael. It's the Am Yisrael, the oppressed people coming to be saved by God, forcing the Egyptians' hand till they let them go, till we become a people and receive the Torah. But reading the parashot, there's another narrative happening. One of the aims of the 10 plagues is to educate the Egyptians about God's presence. The makot, the plagues, aren't just there to let the people go, because you could just done one fatal blow and let them out. It's a learning process to teach the Egyptians about the presence of God. That's a fascinating prospect. We're not interested just in us, we're interested in them. We're not just interested in freeing the slaves, we're interested in educating the enslavers. We're interested that the Egyptians will learn about God. Why? Because they're people. They need to learn about God. And this is evident throughout all the 10 plagues. V'yadu Mitzrayim ki ani Adonai. Let the Egyptians know that I am God. But in our parasha, there's another aspect to this. The parasha on the eves of Korban Pesach, the first Korban Pesach, God commands Moshe to command the people of Israel as following. דבר נא באוזני העם וישאלו איש מאת רעהו ואישה מאת רעותה כלי כסף וכלי זהב. ויתן אדוני את חן העם בעיני מצרים. The people of Israel are commanded to go to their neighbors, the Egyptians, and borrow vessels of gold and silver. Why? Because you should have money to leave. But notice the way the Torah phrases it. וישאלו איש מאת רעהו. A man will borrow from his friend, from his peer. And isha me'et re'uta, and the woman will ask from her neighbor, from her peer. You're talking about civil relationships, neighborly relationships between the oppressor and the oppressed. Somehow, the difference between the slave and the master changed, and now they're a form of equality. The Shadal Shmuel David Lutzato, on the Pasuk, God gave the Chen Ha'am B'nei Mitzrayim, the beauty of the people he showed to the people of Egypt. Shadal explains that that was one of the purposes of the plagues. If God is intervening on behalf of these slaves, they must not be just slaves, they must be people. And throughout the plagues, the level of the Jews, the Israelites, raised, and now they're equal to the Egyptians in the eyes of the Egyptians. They became, instead of just mere slaves that you just walk by ignoring them, they became people. And the process of the plagues isn't just to teach them that God is in the heavens, but rather to teach the Egyptians that there's man on earth. Don't say, I am the master and they're the slaves and therefore they're worth nothing. Learn from God that these slaves are worth something. They might be your equals. You might create relationships with them. And the oppressor needs to be taught not just that God is stronger than they are, but rather that the people they oppressed are people. The past few weeks in Israel, there was a very windy, cold winter. And most of us just stayed home trying to get warm. But a few people turned to the Supreme Court and said, they're refugees, or work refugees, coming from the south into Israel. And Israel is stopping them from coming in. In fact, it's imprisoning them in order for them not to come into the state of Israel. That's fine, they say. But it's cold. Do they have heat in their cells? And people turned to the Supreme Court and said, we're not asking you not to imprison them. We're not asking you not to evict them. We're asking you, while they're still here in our jurisdiction, we need to treat them as people. Give them blankets. Give them coats. Give them heat. Because we're not willing to enslave people and dehumanize them. We're willing to fight human beings. We might disagree with them. We might evict them. But while they're here, we have to treat them as human beings. Shabbat Shalom.